Marvel Rivals is undoubtedly one of the most successful games of the last year. Fans love the game for many reasons, but what sells it for me is that these characters are very well crafted, each giving you a sense of the power fantasy that comes with them, as their endgame skill set perfectly matches how they've always been depicted in the comics. Captain America is a tank who can use his shield to protect his team. Spider-Man can thwip behind the enemy lines to take out their healers and snipers. Mantis provides her team with heal over time and damage increase buffs. I can't understate how refreshing it is to see a developer truly understand the source material. Currently, at the time of this video, there are now 39 different characters in the game. According to the developers when the game launched, their goal is to release one new character every half season, or roughly every month and a half, and they stayed true to their word, and we got every member of the Fantastic Four, Emma Frost, and Ultron just joined them the weekend this video goes live. With each season being 3 months, that's 8 new heroes a year. If Marvel Rivals keeps that pace up, the game is looking to break its 100th character in January 2033. That's just going off of the original 3 months per season timeline that they've shown so far. According to the developer vision from season 2, they'd like to go one season every 2 months. So one new character every single month, which would bring that 100th character in just over 5 years from now. I just don't think that's going to be possible without ruining what people love about this game. So let's get into it. The biggest hurdle to this plan is that they need to create a character that is different enough from every other character in the game, in both design and gameplay. If you really look at it, yes, there are well over 700 unique superheroes in Marvel Comics. For comparison, the card game Marvel Snap is already well past 300, and they're still releasing semi-relevant characters to this day. I mean, there's still a good number of characters right now. Realistically, we should be getting Blade here pretty soon, and they're not afraid to pull from the lesser-known characters like Len Lee's Iron Fist, Jeff the Landshark, Luna Snow, and Penny Parker. And with the story reasoning for all these characters being there is because of some multiversal shenanigans with Doctor Doom and a Doctor Doom from the year 2099, even the versions in-game aren't necessarily the mainline versions of these characters. Like with this Captain America also being from the futuristic 2099 universe, and Psylocke being the feudal Japanese ninja from the Peach Momoko's Demon Days, and not the 616 version with a very weird backstory. But if you cut out all the derivative characters, legacy heroes, one-note heroes that never really made a splash outside of a few team-up series, just how many characters are there to get excited about? So I think this is the easiest problem to solve. Just use the multiverse to do whatever you want and spice up the character a little bit. Take Crystal, for example. She has such an awesome power set in the comics, and would be perfect to use her as a blank canvas because most comic book fans would struggle to name a third thing about her, other than, the fact that she's an Inhuman or the ex-wife of Quicksilver. I mean, she's the Princess of the Moon who became an elemental superpowered hero. She is quite literally Marvel's Sailor Moon, and no one knows about her. The executive producer of the game also said that just releasing skins of a similar character isn't going to cut it as a whole brand new one. If we're getting Miles Morales, he's going to get his own design, not just copying Peter Parker's Spider-Man. You have to keep in mind his lore because he's a very beloved character that fans have been asking for. So if you add Miles to the game, all the same abilities as Peter Parker, just with more, from a gameplay perspective, why would anyone choose to play as OG Spider-Man again? Miles would be literally better in every single way, which would make the developers want to buff Peter's attacks to compensate. But now that the game has 2 characters that can harass the enemy's team's healers with no counterplay, every other delicate adjustment needs to be made to the game just over and over and over and over again. I'm not even talking about making the game competitive on a professional level, where even slight percentage shifts can shift entire metas in some games. I'm talking about on the level of people who just want to have fun playing it. Power creep is inevitable. You always want to make the new things fun and exciting, but balancing 38 characters around each other is a nightmare. Now, how is that going to look when you hit 60? When you hit 100? That's not even getting to the fact that there's canonically some characters who are just overpowered compared to others. Like Captain Marvel. Just looking at her from the comics and adapting her to the game, you would want to make her a tank that can fly, but with ranged blast attacks. The only 2 characters in the game who are really tank busters are Wolverine and Scarlet Witch. One of them can't fly, and the other would be way too squishy to be left in the open like that. The developers would need to be very delicate at balancing her around every other character, or else she'd be way too strong. If you don't make her a tank, then cool, you just made her Iron Man, but without the rocket launchers. See where I'm getting at? Not a lot of superpowers can realistically work in a competitive video game, and you need to make it fair and competitive for all players, regardless of which character they picked. Like, if one team had Galactus, Thanos, and Doctor Doom, and you're just playing as Squirrel Girl, I mean, come on, lore-wise, you need to give the other team a fighting chance. There's some adjustments you can make, like healing factors don't make a character invincible. Super speed is out immediately because only players with a strong enough computer and fast enough internet can actually use them properly. This problem of balancing for lore and gameplay is all over the 1v4 horror survival game Dead by Daylight. Take Michael Myers, for instance. His special ability is to charge up by staring down his opponents, and it works wonderfully in-game because what it looks like in practice is just how he'd stalk the people in the films. Leatherface has a chainsaw rush that resembles how he acted in the films, and Sadako from The Ring has her 7 days thing changed to being the 7 marks of condemnation. But how does Freddy Krueger work? His whole thing is that he can only hurt people inside their dreams, where he can control everything. For the longest time, he was literally impossible to play as, because as long as the survivors didn't go to sleep, they would never lose. Or Chucky, a quick, tiny, murderous doll running around is almost impossible for the players to detect. How do you make him weaker to compensate? You can't nerf his strength, or he wouldn't be able to down anybody. You could slow down his vaulting ability, which tracks. He is very short, so jumping over a window ledge would take him a bit. Both Chucky and Freddy are now playable, but only after many years of constant updates and tweaking. And these updates and tweaking need to be done delicately. Even if you perfectly craft a single character, they could still upset the balance of every aspect of a game when they unintentionally synergize with another character so hard, it breaks the meta. Just look at what happened to Overwatch when Brigitte was added, the game's first defensive support, with a stun, a heal, and a barrier which was meant to protect more of the backline characters from enemies diving at our team's dedicated healers. With Brigitte, there was just no need to run literally any dedicated DPS character when there were these 3 specific tanks and 3 specific supports whose abilities all complemented each other so perfectly that they could buff each other to the stratosphere. If you were playing against a team that ran this comp and you didn't run this, well, let's be honest, quite boring, uneventful, yet super safe strategy, you would lose in the character selection screen. And that's what took over every competitive Overwatch team. The only answer was to balance the entire game around her being used in the competitive scene, and to balance for only the 0.1% of the player base, and having to institute a 2-2-2 roll lock made the game way less fun for the average player who just wanted to relax after a day of school or work. I'm not going to be as over-dramatic as a lot of Overwatch players around that time were, but yeah, adding Brigitte to the game had a significant drop-off in the player count. Speaking of unintentional synergies, Marvel Snap is full of these problems. Sure, the game makes their individual abilities work with the lore, but rarely do they work well together as intended. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy cards all have a similar on-reveal ability, but that's about it. And I'm just saying, it's really weird that almost all the Wakandan cards work perfectly with all the Hydra cards, but none of the Fantastic Four cards would ever appear in the same deck. Now, back to how the characters would be made. The current way would be to pick the character from the comics and then find a way to make it work in-game. But that's where I see all the troubles. It's just going to make every character release come with a huge meta-shattering rework of every character. And that's not something that I think can be sustainable for the game if you're doing it to the fans every single month. What I think would be best is to accept that, yeah, there's hundreds of different characters to choose from, but we're not going to get our wish list immediately. But with that, you don't have to work backwards to try to fit them in. Instead, look at what the game is currently needing to balance around the others. Seeing as how the Fantastic Four released during the Dracula season, and Ultron is coming during the Hellfire Gala season, yeah, there's no need to theme the characters around each season. Just release who you think makes the most sense to keep the game healthy. Make the new characters basically rock, paper, scissors. They can perfectly beat the top-rated character at that time, but would get squashed by the lowest-rated character. This way the pick rates can always stay fresh. Make the specific role that the new character would fill first, and then work to find who would best fit that mold. Because it takes a lot longer than a single month to create a character. From concept to creation, they're looking at 5 or 6 characters coming out in the meantime. So internal playtests are going to be very important, or they're going to have to open up all the unreleased characters to an open PTR. So, for the sake of argument, let's walk through how my process would go. One thing that I can see with the current game is there's a lack of a tank who can attack at range and keep the enemies away. There's Groot, but his walls are more about controlling where the enemies could go instead of where they already are. Wolverine and Scarlet Witch are now unstoppable because people realize their attacks to taking percentage damage instead of a set amount of damage. So, tank with range attacks could counter Logan, but maybe build in a fundamental weakness to a lesser picked character like Black Widow. And here's where the comic historian would come in and look at who would best fit those parameters. My mind goes to Bishop. His power is energy absorption, and he's got a gun for regular attacks. His ability could be to summon a personal shield on just himself that charges up whenever he receives damage, similar to Overwatch's Zarya whenever she pops her shield. But instead of using it to charge for basic attacks, Bishop could use it to charge up a concussive blast that pushes the enemy away. The more damage he takes, the further they launch. The shield wouldn't be full immunity and it'd have to be held down to use, so when it's let go, it's perfect timing for a long-range sniper. Then on to the next character. Oops! Bishop accidentally makes the Thing too powerful, because his passive of not being moved around by other players. We should add in a duelist who's got high mobility, AoE ticking damage, and maybe a flight option, because we don't actually have anyone who can both walk and fly permanently. Someone who can jump on and off a glider, like the Green Goblin, but with a healing prevented pumpkin grenade that absorbs a set amount of damage depending on how long they were in that gas. Think Overwatch's Ana with her biotic grenade, but turned into an ultimate. But a lot of the strategists have a cooldown on their healing, so we need a healer with a constant single target stream, like Medic or Mercy. I'd pick a magic user who's used healing magic before in the comics. So, Clea. And to round out the rest of her kit, I would make her a lot more similar to Doctor Strange's abilities. I think you can also only pull up a certain type of character, their legacy heroes, and all of their multiversal derivatives exactly 3 times. Once as a tank, DPS, and healer. Back to the Peter and Miles problem from earlier. Oh no, can't add Miles Morales because he's too much like Peter Parker? Well, if you're trying to rework Spider-Man as a healer, how would you go about it? I mean, technically, Penny is already a spider person, but as a tank. So why can't this now be a thing? He can keep his stealth and electric stun, just have him play with his high mobility and make him a close-range healer. He canonically is a pacifist, so having him deal a low amount of damage would make sense. Also, canonically, he has yellow electric webbing. Penny Parker in the game has the yellow electric webbing that heals. So therefore, he should have a much more effective healing webbing for his allies. Don't get me wrong, what I'm saying is make the gameplay styles what's similar. Not the abilities, since, those abilities are going to have to change anyways because it's a tank, DPS, and healer. Or, just don't do the once-a-month release schedule. Just playtest a character for longer than a single month before you release them, before immediately jumping into the next big update. But what do you guys think? Which characters do you expect to show up in the game, and what would their abilities be? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this week's video, please hit that like button, and subscribe for more weekly content on comic books and nerd stuff. I've been Eric, and you've been awesome.